Okay, we are on number two of the four paragraphs. It says that the Egyptians did evil to us and afflicted us and imposed hard labor upon us. And what does it mean that they did evil to us? So it says, let us deal with them wisely, lest they multiply, and if we happen to be at war, they may join our enemies and fight against us and then leave the country. Again, we had to figure out where in the world was this coming from? So the Jews, Joseph shows up, he fixed the whole economy, right? The Jews were very productive members of society. We lived in a very nice neighborhood in Egypt. And all of a sudden, Pharaoh just comes up with this crazy concept that we were suddenly going to join this other nation that didn't even exist. And the big thing was Egypt was the world power. Like, why would we? Egypt was so nice to take us in. Why would we? Why would we join the enemies? And so it's teaching us again. The Haggada, the Baal Haggada is teaching us the fundamental concept of anti-Semitism is irrational. It's not normal. It has no basis in reality. And so we try to confront anti-Semitism by trying to, well, no, we're not so bad. It has no element and no standing in physical reality. So there's no way that we can try to argue our way out of it. They afflicted us. It said they set taskmasters over us in order to oppress them with their burdens, and they built Pitom and Ramses, a treasure cities for Pharaoh. So I mentioned it earlier, but basically the concept was that the whole reason why they wanted to appoint taskmasters over the Jews was not because they wanted us to be more effective. This was not about assembly lines. This was not about production. This was about destruction. They just wanted to know us well enough so that they could find the jobs that we hated doing. And that was the whole idea. We explained that they would make us do jobs that at the end of the day, we would see that the work would disappear, and we would have no sense that I'm producing. And you learn this fundamental concept that it's so important that whatever you do, you have to feel like you're actually doing something. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. Okay, they imposed hard labor upon us. As it says, they subjected the children of Israel with crushing labor. Again, what is that? What is that concept? The idea of the crushing labor was that it was so profound and it was so dark and it was so terrible that we couldn't even imagine a tomorrow. It's a crazy concept. I spoke about this on one of my video blogs, which I recommend you all look at on Facebook. But the Jews have always had a concept that the world would eventually be better. And so if you have an idea that there will be a brighter future and a better tomorrow, so then you can push through the ins and outs of today. But if you lose that, so then you're at risk of completely being wiped out. And so the crushing labor that they pushed upon us, we almost forgot that it could ever get better. And at that point, God had to intervene. At that point, our lives were so horrific that that God had to do something. What did it mean our lives were so horrific? So they broke. We're actually going to go into that in the next paragraph. Let's talk about that. It says that we cried out to Hashem, the God of our fathers, and Hashem heard our cry and saw our afflictions, our burden, and our oppression. What does that mean? Okay, Hashem heard our cry. We cried to Hashem, God of our forefathers. Now, this is very important. A lot of times we think when it comes to our prayers and when it comes to how we connect to God, we have to be very organized. Right? We have to ask the rabbi, and rabbi, what's the right prayer over here? A lot of times, people tell me, someone, God forbid, in their family is suffering. Rabbi, could you find me some psalm that you could, that I can read, or some kind of a magical, incantation that I can say? The answer is, we don't do that in Judaism. You see, what really works is a screaming out from the heart. It's not about, again, the Psalms, the Tehillim, if you work on it, that was King David. King David had this ability to capture the huge amount of human emotion. But what made it so real was that it was coming from his essence. And so that's what happened. That there was a scream that came out of us that was genuine. It says that it happened in the course of many days that the king. I'm going and explaining what the paragraph is. That I'm just reading as it goes. It happened in the course of the many days that the king of Egypt died, and that the children of Israel groaned because of the servitude and cried. Their cry because of the servitude rose up to God. So this explains, what does it mean the king died? Why are they sad? So the interpretation we're just going to run with, and there's many of them, is that basically when the king died, so they just had a momentary break. They had a momentary break, and they breathed for 1 second, and they just realized how horrible their life was. There was, and that again, I don't want to bring in all these kinds of other references, but there's a great song called "The River" by Bruce Springsteen, and one of the things he talks about is that these people had these big dreams in their life, and they saw the dreams kind of floating away and not materializing as they got older. They just kept working and kept going on, and they just pretend they forgot about it. So the amazing thing was when Pharaoh died, the Jews for 1 second had a breath of fresh air, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" And that's what caused the scream. Okay, we're just going to go very quickly through this next thing. Hashem heard their cry, as it says, God heard their groaning, and God recalled His covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So that's a very profound concept. What does that mean? That means that you're a little Jewish person. I'm a little Jewish person, and you think in the scheme of things, what is my suffering? I'm having a hard time with this, that, the other thing. How is, what is God is in charge of everything, and why does He have what does He care about my little life? So the answer is, you have to realize that your ancestors were these unbelievably holy people to God. They were His best friends. They were His best friends. They were His most beloved people. And so if your best friend's grandson would need something from you, you would do anything because of your relationship. And so it means that all of our suffering and all of our problems and our travails, it's not just one dude's issue. It's the grandkids of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So when we cry, our cries are so important to God. He saw our affliction. It says that He saw the disruption of family life. What did the Egyptians do? It was sick. What they did was they made it that husbands and wives couldn't live together. And again, not to go on a diatribe, but one of the most important things for people is to be able to have a home life, a husband and wife that's lives are intact, that they can kind of come and lean on each other for greatness and to kind of overcome the situations they're going through. That's one of the biggest blessings of having a husband or a wife, right? And what did the Egyptians do? They made them separate. That even at the end of the day, after the worst day ever, you couldn't go home to anyone. The men would have to sleep in the fields, and the women would have to go to sleep in their homes. And we were lost. We were absolutely lost. It says God saw the children of Israel, and they knew. Again, now the crazy concept is, and I'm just going to run it out till 10 minutes, was that the Jewish women did not despair, and they went to the fields, and they found their husbands, and they were able to make their husbands want to be with them, even though they were so distraught and upset. And the husbands would have their marital relationship. And even amongst the most horrific situations that were going on in Egypt, the Jewish women had the faith in God to continue on having a family. Our burden, it refers to the children, as it says that every son that is born you shall cast into the river, but every daughter you should let live. And so the Egyptians thought, look, the women will marry the Egyptians, and the sons we're going to wipe out. We're going to kill them all. Our oppression, it refers to pressure expressed in the words, I have also seen how the Egyptians are oppressing them. So the idea was that God witnessed how every little thing the Egyptians did to bury on us and hurt us, He was going to take accounting of that, and He was going to redeem us from all of that. And it was a matter of stacking up the pressure before He would kind of explode out and take us out.